Welcome to another episode of Beyond Perception. And also today, it's really about discovering reality and to better understand who we are and how we think. My name is Simon, and I have the true pleasure to have you, Dr. Linda Elder, as a guest for the second time. You are an educational psychologist and really a prominent authority on critical thinking, as you are the president of the Foundation for Critical Thinking and also the executive director of the Center for Critical Thinking, which is the longest running institution on critical thinking in the world. So it's my true pleasure to be here today with you again. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I believe it was a couple of months ago we had a first conversation, and you provided us with an introduction into the framework of fair-minded critical thinking, and what we want to talk about today. But let me say that further, for those of you who have not yet watched that episode, I can really recommend to do that. As Dr. Linda Elder provided us with a lot of insights. And today we want to talk about the human mind, right? When I thought about this conversation, I remembered a statistic I have heard a couple of months ago, and basically was asked that by default, or it really is a reflection about that by default, our mind seems to be really a little bit messy, before we look into it, how we think and what is really going on in there. And I'm referring to Dr. Bruce Lipton, who researched stem cells and became a pioneer in the field of epigenetics. And he estimates that in average, 75% of our beliefs and our thinking is self-sabotaging and destructive. And that's how we humans seemingly operate by default.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I haven't seen that statistic, but it connects with my experience.
Yeah, I can send you the link later if that interests you. And just if we think that our results are a reflection of our thinking, then we can basically assume that we as humanity are basically just creating suffering for us and others, no?
Yes.
And that said, it seems to make sense to look into how our mind actually works, and discuss maybe a little bit the mechanisms, how basically the mind operates. And what do you think? Like, where should we start?
Let me then jump in with a couple of, let's say, ways to enter this. I think an early move that we have to make to understand the mind is, well, maybe the earliest move is to realize that it's very complex, and that your particular human mind is what you need to really understand the most. And when you understand that, you will understand a lot about humanity itself. But there will still be many things that you don't know, because you're not like everyone else. So, but on the other hand, we share certain patterns which we can discuss. So all of us think, we feel, we want, also, each of us is egocentric, meaning we're selfish or we're locked within our own perspective, or we're sociocentric, meaning that we're groupish, meaning group selfishness, or we're locked within our group ideologies. And these patterns are rampant throughout human life. And this is what your author was talking about, that you mentioned, when he focused on the self-sabotaging behavior and the destructive nature of the human species. So we're we're a very odd species because we're on the one hand capable of so many beautiful things. We could spend all day and all night and all day the next day and many, many days talking about the many wonderful things that are happening among humans and among humans and other species. But there's also the ugly and the mean-spirited and the torture and the killing and the wars and the domestic abuse and the just putting people down, all of the dark side. And it's hard to say. So if we start with the idea, this is again about now getting a bit into statistics. If we say that 75% of our beliefs lie in the category of the dark side, it doesn't follow then that you yourself hold that 75% of your beliefs are in the dark side. It means you had better beware that many, if not most, are. So in other words, the 75% is an average. So it's, you see, there are, when we think of the normal distribution, there are always going to be the outliers. And in critical thinking, we are outliers because by our very nature, we are continually thinking about thinking to find problems in thinking and to improve our thinking in order to live at a higher level, to live on the side that is beautiful. So you see, there are many ways to enter this conversation. So, and there are many other ways that I could have started. So, and so we need to understand that there isn't, and there will never be, the book to the human mind. Because there are so many complexities in the ways that we think, and there are a lot of uniquenesses. So that, again, that each of us has. So we have to take the theory that's available to us, and we have to decide which of the theory helps us live at the highest level of quality. So then let me go from there to a little bit of the theory of that we use in our approach to critical thinking. And by the way, I want to mention that in our work for now almost 42 years, we have advanced fair-minded critical thinking. And the fair-mindedness is front and center in our approach, and it is the reason for our existence. So in other words, we see many problems in thinking that have to do with people being selfish, with groups being selfish, with businesses being selfish, with you name it. So, and well, groupish. So in other words, so we've got these problems that we're facing, and now we need a way to enter thinking and to find problems in it again. And so in our approach, just to give an overview, we focus on taking thinking apart, looking at the elements of reasoning. So whenever you reason for a purpose, you ask questions, you use information, you make inferences based on the information and the assumptions you're making, another element of reasoning. There are concepts connected with your assumptions, guiding your reasoning, all connected to your point of view, which is another element of reasoning. And all of this reasoning that you're doing leads to implications. And so that's one conceptual set in our approach. That, in other words, we say, if you're talking about critical thinking, you're talking about reasoning, because that's what we mean when we say thinking in this case. We mean reasoning. So the question becomes, well, what's involved in reasoning? And so in the early days, beginning in the 1960s, Richard Paul began to ask these fundamental questions. And he basically came up with the idea that, look, we can boil reasoning down to 8 elements. We don't have to have a long list, and these long lists don't help us. So we've got the elements of reasoning. We've had them for decades. We also, once we do that, we need to be able to apply, and we need to understand how to apply intellectual standards to our reasoning. So we need to make sure we're clear, we're accurate, we're relevant, we're broad, when we need to consider more than one point of view. We do, in other words, we need to think with depth when there are complexities. We need to focus on the significant, not the trivial. We need to be fair in our thinking. We need to be logical, and our reasoning needs to be sufficient in context. These are some of the intellectual standards that we need to be continually adhering to. And not only that, we have to go beyond the concept of skills to the concept of character. So we're developing a certain kind of character as thinkers when we take this path seriously. So, for example, intellectual empathy is one intellectual virtue to which we aspire. We will never completely embody it. It would be an impossibility to always think within everyone else's point of view that's relevant in context sufficiently, you see, because we're flawed. And so, but this is a standard that we're going to adhere to, if at all possible. And we give assent to them, and we commit to them. I'm sorry, intellectual virtue. So intellectual empathy is one, meaning I can think within your point of view, even when I disagree with it. And not only that, I want to think within your point of view. I want to understand you, especially if I disagree with you. I want to deeply understand your point of view. And if I can show you that I understand your point of view by saying to you, okay, Simon, let me articulate what you just said in my own words, and you tell me if I'm correct. Notice the very simple, the very basic intellectual move there. And by the way, most intellectual moves in critical thinking are quite simple, theoretically. It's a question of applying them. So now, so intellectual empathy is one intellectual virtue. There are others. Intellectual humility, being able to distinguish at any moment between what I know and what I do not know, and wanting to do that. You can, when you hear scholars talking in a lecture, or in true scholars in a lecture, or let's say in a debate, they're the first to say, I don't know the answer to that. And they don't, it's very easy for them to say it. And maybe the questioner wants to still push them into some kind of, right, you will make a, so we still want you to make a move because you're the expert. And the person comes back and says, I'm sorry, I stick with, as Socrates says, I know nothing. We can conjecture based on early data, but you see very careful use of language here. So this would be an example of exhibiting intellectual humility. So we don't learn to do that in human societies. We don't learn to say, hey, I was wrong. And isn't it good that I can say, I was wrong when I thought that. Okay, so how many people easily change their minds? So let me give you, so you've thought something for all of your life, Simon, and now I'm going to give you an argument against it, and you instantly say, that's right, Linda, you're right. That's the ideal. But now you were laughing because there's something that keeps us from doing that, something that keeps us from hearing those other arguments. So there are other intellectual virtues which we can go into at another time. But so now let's move to those theory sets, the elements of reasoning, intellectual standards, intellectual virtues, to the barriers to critical thinking development. And you could say these come out of psychological and sociological thinking, fundamentally. And now, let me just talk a little bit about the theory so that we can have a bit of an introduction. So now we've talked about those three conceptual sets. So let's step back from thinking. And by the way, so if we think about the term critical thinking, think critical reasoning. So we've talked a little bit about reasoning, just a tiny bit, but the critical side means the criteria that we use to judge the reasoning. And that's where intellectual standards come in. So we have critical thinking that we're ultimately concerned with here, but we need to step back from that a bit to ask ourselves, well, what else is involved in the human mind other than thinking? So thinking is what we're focusing on, but what else is there? Is there something other than thinking? We know there is, and that's what we put under the label of affect. So we have not only thinking, which is the cognitive side, but we also have feeling and we have wanting. And the three of these functions of the mind serve as a triangle. In other words, where you have one, you always have the others. So if I think that, if you ask me to do this podcast, you've asked me a question, if I think that it is important, I will feel good about doing the podcast. And, or you could say, back up from that, I think it is important. Therefore, I want to say yes, right? Mm-hmm. And I know that it will be a pleasurable experience. You see, there's the thinking, the feeling, and the wanting. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But and so whenever you're going through life, you can ask yourself at any given moment, what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What am I wanting right now? And so let's say that you're reading the newspaper and you run across a very negative article. Then you can you walk away and you turn off your computer. You've read the paper for today. You're not going to read any more of that. And you go on, and I'm going to do something else now and go about my business. And lo and behold, you have this negative feeling. And you say to yourself, where's that coming from? And then you can stop and say, where exactly is this negative feeling coming from? Because I've got to get this out of my mind, because it is spoiling my territory. You see, it's keeping me out of my sublime space. If that's what the highest levels of living could be, if we could describe it in that way. So in other words, I want to be thinking positive, pleasant, productive emotions most of the time. And so if I've got a negative, nagging emotion, so what, I've got to get rid of that. And now sometimes you can't get rid of it. Not if it's something like heavy grief. And you know, if you've been through it, what I mean by that. And you know that in those first however number of days, months, or years, that you can't just say, well, just, Linda, get out of that blue funk. I mean, I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. So there we see part of the complexities of the human mind. So we want to be able to intervene in our feelings, but we have to be realistic about that intervention. And so then in a case like, let's say, grief, then we have to, well, I'll speak for myself. When I went through it at the heaviest levels, I turned to art. And it was something I'd never done before, because I couldn't stand the pain. It was like, it was stinging all the time. See, so now so when we talk about feelings, we can't just talk about them in a superficial level. We've got to be realistic, and we've got to say, okay, right now, you're just going to feel pain. So is there any way to get out of it at all? Is there anything I can do that will give me any relief? And for me, that was art fundamentally. But still, I was just, angry. And so, and I realized you're just going through grief, Linda. So it's all right. Just don't bring your anger out. I mean, unless it's a good friend, right? And then you probably should, you need to be realistic about how to deal with your emotions. So when you're going through those situations, you need to have a good friend that you can call and say, I know that I've said this 100 times now, but I've got to say it again. I can't stand this anymore. I can't stand that he's not coming back. I can't stand that he's dead. I don't believe that he's gone. You see, so that's So we've got to, when we talk again about feelings, we can explore this more deeply, but we all have feelings and they're going on in our minds all day long. So right now, so before we started talking, you had some thinking that you were doing, you had some desires, some questions you were going to ask, some outcomes you were looking for, and you had some feelings. And now you have some different, a little bit different thinking. Your motivation may be basically the same. Maybe your feelings are basically the same, or maybe they're a little different. Maybe you're feeling like, hey, this is really even more interesting than I thought it would be. You see, so those feelings are your pulse, sort of the pulse of the mind. So we should never ignore our feelings. They help us find entrance to our thinking, which we've got to change in order to modify the feeling. So we have thinking, we have feeling, we have wanting, the desire side that moves us forward, propels us to do things that keep us from feeling, let's say, like there's no hope for the human species. So you see, you do things to fight back rather than just say, okay, I guess we're just sinking. So let's just go down to the bar and drink and talk about how screwed up everybody is. You know, that doesn't help us. So, I mean, it may be the sinking of the Titanic, but there may be some boats we can get into, if that's a decent analogy for the earth and the shape that it is in. So lots of people are depressed right now because and lots of young people are now reaching adult age and saying, what happened? What did you people do to our planet? And, you know, when we were little kids, you were sort of acting like everything was okay. And suddenly we get here and we realize it's not okay. So you see, these are feelings, and these feelings lead us either to, okay, let's do something about it. Let's find a way to get this carbon out of the excess carbon out of the ecosystem. And people are doing this. There are all kinds of advancements in the green arena right now. You see, we don't have enough money there. Sure, we've still got gasoline driving the economy, but we've got people pushing on the other side saying that's over. That's over. And so we're moving on. And the question is whether that group is going to be strong enough, and whether that group is going to prevail over the people that are basically helping to destroy the planet at a higher level, let's say. I mean, we're all contributing to it. If you live on the planet, you're contributing to its destruction, more or less, right? Because you're using some of its resources. And there are only so many resources that we have. Okay, so what I'm saying is that we think these thoughts and we have these emotions and we get angry and we feel like there's no hope. But your thinking can lead you in a better direction. And those people who are taking the high ground and saying, I know that it may be too late, but I'm still going to try to do something. And so therefore they're taking their will and they're taking their power and they're putting it in the advancement of the common good. So, okay, so that's a little bit about thinking, feeling, and wanting. So when you go through the day, and how many times I couldn't begin to count how many cycles we go through, each one of us, where we're thinking, feeling, wanting, thinking, feeling, wanting, thinking. I mean, in one conversation, it can be, 100 times. See, so these are occurring, these functions. We need to know that whenever we have a negative feeling, we can stop and say, what's the thinking leading to that? Oh yeah, it was that article that I read. It really upset me. Okay, so now what are you going to do about it, Linda? You going to write an editorial? Are you going to join a group that's working against that problem? Or are you going to say, look, you're already doing these things and you really can't also jump on every other problem? You see, there is such a thing as doing enough. And you need to know when you've done enough, when you've done your fair share. And that's a personal decision. You see, so we've got thinking, feeling, wanting. Now, these are occurring all the time. We can begin to get command of this by saying, what is, okay, I'm feeling this. Okay, what can I do? So what's the thinking leading to this emotion? So then what can I do about the situation? And if I can't do anything, then I've got to let it go. I've got to just let that go. I'm sorry, I'm sad, it's awful. Yes, a reminder of the dark side of humanity. You've got that reminder constantly. So you can focus on that reminder, or you can take your energy and do something more productive. So you can make the decision right then. Okay, yes, it's sad. I can't think of anything I can do, but sometimes I'll like mull it over and I'll say, well, okay, I'll write something about it on my blog. That may not reach very many people, but it's something I can do. So it's an example I can use in a book. There was an article in our paper recently on the problem of solitary confinement. And there is a person who is fighting basically saying it's unjust to keep people in solitary confinement. And he's in the United States. He's been in solitary confinement for 27 years. And he says he's going mad, and he knows that he is, but the only thing he can do is contribute this. And it was in prison for armed robbery and for escaping. So it wasn't even murder. It wasn't mass murder. It was that concept of placing people in solitary confinement, when I read that, and I've known this, it just bothered me. And I was just, I just was walking around, after that, I was just getting sick, about this. And then I said, okay, well, Linda, maybe you should do your blog on this. And then you can at least do something. And I started creating a kind of argument, you see, again, how I would approach it. And I thought, well, maybe I'll take the Socratic approach. I'll just ask some questions. So you see, that my point is that I took that very negative experience and I did something with it. And that something may not be good enough, but if everybody does a little bit of something, it will be good enough. Because you see, if the people were against solitary confinement, we wouldn't have it. If the people were against anything, we wouldn't have it, because they could rise up. People have always had the power to rise up, but they haven't had the critical thinking abilities to follow through when they have risen up, generally speaking. So we want to understand our thinking. We know that it's going on all day long. We've got this feeling state, which gives us a direct line to our thinking and to our desires. Now, so let me add now another dimension, and then I'll pause. So it's just to give a bit of an introduction, right? So now, when we are thinking, feeling, and wanting, we can either be doing so rationally or irrationally. And there are different ways to conceptualize this part of the human mind. I mean, Freud had the id, ego, superego, and we can talk about that, but there are different ways of making these moves. But the point is that we focus on the phenomena that we categorize with a word. So in other words, so we have thinking, feeling, wanting occurring, and at any moment we can be rational or we can be irrational, and we can divide irrational again into the egocentric or the sociocentric. And when you make that move, then you realize, well, then some of the time I'm rational. So that's a good thing. And I'm wanting to know when I am rational. I need to make sure that when I think I'm rational, I am rational. And it goes the other way as well. Somebody can try to make you think there's something wrong with your thinking whenever there's nothing wrong with your thinking, in fact, but you accept their definition because they have control over you. So you start to think that you're not very bright because this person that you live with treats you like you're not very bright. But actually, everyone has strengths. Every human being has capacities to develop. Every person has the capacities to develop in their unique ways. And our job is to find those unique ways for us. So, so we have underneath the irrational, egocentric, and sociocentric thinking again. And then under the egocentric, we have thinking, which is, again, selfish. And then on the sociocentric side, groupish. So it's more for us, more for me. That's an easy one, right? So if I said, give me some examples of people that you know that are selfish. Everyone who's viewing or listening to this will be able to, you just write down, right? And then if I say, now, did you write your name on that bit? And of course, even if they did, it wasn't probably first. So we tend to see ourselves as mainly rational. Instead of seeing ourselves as 75% self-sabotaging and destructive, using those early terms that you brought in, we see ourselves as, 75 to 80 to 90% rational. Mm-hmm. And so then the key, the question becomes, how do I find my egocentricity? Mm-hmm. So one part of this is the selfish side of me, or the groupish side of me, more for my group, more for my country. In the world, we're highly nationalistic for the most part, and most countries believe their country is the best, and that's been throughout history, right? My group is the best, So this is a pathology running throughout human life. So every group is going to have some pathologies in it, by implication. No group is going to be 100% rational, just like no human can be 100% rational. So, and usually there are lots of problems, especially the more, I think that the bigger the groups are, like in terms of bureaucracy, for example, we have more, pathologies multiplying, which relate to bad procedure and, a lot of other things that could be mentioned. But in any case, what I could say to anyone who is joining us today is start to look around you. Look at how you act in your own groups. What do you do in those groups? Are you dominating? Are you the one always talking? Do you listen? Are you the one always listening? Do you ever want to say something, but you don't say it because these other people are dominating? Or you think, well, I don't really have that much to say. I don't really have that much to contribute. In other words, how do you orient yourself within the groups that you live? Are you a football fan? Are you a basketball fan, a tennis? Are you a fan of some type? Do you group together with other people with the same orientations? So, everyone's for this team. But what people are sometimes getting into, fights, and they're, as it were, dying for their team. And they themselves are doing nothing except watching. But they feel like this deep intimacy, or it's really more of a superficial intimacy, but it feels deep. It's a superficial intimacy with these other people that have the same. So we go to these pre-parties and we have, we drink together, and then we laugh and talk about our favorite players, and then we watch them, and then we're really loud, and and then we go to another party and we have a lot of food. And I'm not saying this is a bad thing. I'm saying be aware of what you're doing and and if you are doing all of that without recognition, that if you lived in another part of the country, you wouldn't be doing that. You'd be doing it with the opposite team. You'd hate this team and you'd love another team. So you don't love your team. You love the group of people that you're around, if you learn, love is not the right term, but you're connecting with these people, you see, to feel good within a group. Now let's back up from that, because we humans are naturally group oriented. We are herd animals, but we're also individuals. And so think of us kind of existing on a continuum where some people really just like to be alone a lot. So Emily Dickinson was a person who sort of couldn't stand other people. It seems like she just enjoyed her own thoughts, and she didn't think other people really contributed that much to them. So she just didn't want to be around other people. That's my reading of her. And so she's on way on the one side, right? She's an extreme, but not a, I don't think that anyone could really say that she was mentally unwell, even though people have tried to, because she was extremely on this side. But she also always lived with people. She lived with her sister, and she lived, she had her brother in and out. So in other words, she wasn't by herself. She was within family. So, but you see, still, stayed at home and wanted just to be alone with her own thoughts. That's an individual who really values that side of life. And the opposite person is the person who can't stand to be alone. So that person is always having to be with someone. So what we want is to find where we fit on this continuum, right? Where you are most comfortable. And none of us can be completely isolated. That's clear. So we need our species around us. I mean, again, when I was going through my grief, I would go to a coffee shop just to be around people, but not have to interact with them. See, and I knew that I was doing that. I knew I was going just to see my species, because I knew that I couldn't just be alone, even though that's what I wanted to do. So we want to think well about how we enter groups, how groups are affecting us. And so we can start with this. All groups that you're involved with affect you. Your family, your work group, whatever those groups are, the groups you decide to join, the groups you have to join. And within these groups, there are varying degrees of pathologies. And we can, detail those. But so just to wrap this up then, we're thinking, we're feeling, we're wanting all day long, as long as we're, and probably trying to do it while we're asleep, but let's leave that. So we're thinking, feeling, wanting, and then we are, at any given moment, this thinking, feeling, wanting can be under the direction of our irrational side, which we can divide into the egocentric. So either I'm being selfish or I'm locked into my viewpoint. That was the other dimension I mentioned earlier. So the selfishness we've talked a bit about, or locked within our viewpoint. So that can be either by group or by individual. So you see, just from this discussion, it should be clear how complicated human life is and human communication is. So let me pause.
Yeah, thank you so much. The question comes to mind. Would you say that emotions are a good indicator of one's rationality, or not necessarily? Like how you feel, like your well-being?
No, they're not. Because let me say that some emotions are, let's say, you could say they're neutral. And let me give you an example. So take anger. You can be rationally angry or irrationally angry. So you can be rationally angry at injustice. And that's how I felt when I read that article about solitary confinement. So that was a rational response, which led me to do something, at least a little something positive. So the anger, though justified, has to lead to something that's reasonable. in other words, if I'm just walking around all day, like, okay, so let's say I read that article and then I said, forget it. That's it. That just does it. I'm just done with this world. It's just, these people just can't, I've been trying to do this for decades and nobody will listen. I'm just going to forget it. I'm just going to watch TV for the rest of the day, draw the blinds, and I'm done. So you can give up, or you can let it haunt you and follow you around. Or you, again, I know I've already mentioned this. So that's an example of rational anger, but then we still have to move from that to doing something to get rid of that anger. Okay, so in other words, and you can be angry when your child does something, let's say your child does something rude to someone else and you see them, says something rude, and you feel anger at that. You feel just disgust. Like, what have we been doing all these years if you don't get this basic point that you don't put people down? And if you're putting people down, that's making me angry. You see, that's going on in the psyche, let's say, at that moment. Well, that's a momentary response. As a momentary response is perfectly normal. It's what you do next that really makes the difference. So then do you go and slap your kid? Right? I mean, then you take your anger out on the child, then you are certainly being irrational. So that went from rational, what we call rational anger, to irrational anger. So you see, so you've got to watch yourself every moment, because you can say, well, I was justified because he did these things that he should never have done. Yes, but what did you do next? Because if you do something next that is irrational, then we're going to say that's what it is. We're not going to say, but you're excused because you got so angry. And this is a very important conceptual point, because people will say, there's theory out there that, that you can't control your emotions, that you just have your amygdala gets involved and you just react. Well, if that's true, then how could any of us be held responsible for our behavior? It's perfectly fine for my amygdala to do anything it wants to in a second, but then I've got to intervene right after that and say, okay, yeah, I can see why you would be upset, Linda. I mean, of course, but now how are you going to get this child to see? Because what we have done thus far has not worked. And that's the rational move. So now my energy is all positive in thinking, okay, well, this can be solved. An apology can be given. We can learn. And you see, so that's an example of how, you see, you take anger as one example. But now there are other emotions that are more directly connected to egocentric thinking. And one of them, it's good to know these, because when they occur in your thinking, you can spot them. So one of them is resentment. So if you feel resentment, you're saying something like this at the unconscious level. So let's say I'm feeling resentful toward you, Simon. So I'm saying, so you're trying to give me your reasoning. You're trying to explain to me something you're trying to give me an explanation as to why I should not feel negative. But I'm just the whole time you're talking, I'm not listening to anything that you're saying. And I'm only saying to myself, I'm sick and tired of this. I'm going to hold on to this resentment. I don't care what he says. Now, notice how I'm trying to give voice to this dark side. We have to give voice to that. You have to know your dark side again. So if I'm walking around resentful, then there's something wrong with the way I'm living my life. And if you feel resentment, see, you can say, okay, wait a minute, I'm going to target that. And I'm going to say, wait a minute. Every time I feel resentful or resentment, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to figure out exactly why, and I'm going to address that. So let's say that I feel have this negative emotion towards someone who has repeatedly put me down. So you can say, well, then you have a right to that resentment, Linda, to have that feeling. Well, you may have a right to it, but does it help you? It spoils your, yes, it spoils your, again, your environment, your own inner world. And this, again, we want to be a pleasant place to be. Our inner world, it's my inner sanctuary. Why would I let resentment come into that? That's the kind of thinking that we have to have. And so therefore, so here's some other, so therefore we have to be aware of this negative feeling. We have to target it. We have to deal with it and know that it's something that we've got to change something about ourselves here. So in other words, if you're living with someone who's constantly putting you down, then that's going to affect you no matter what you think. And the way to, and so the thinking in that case that you have to do is you have to figure out how to get out. You have to get out away from that person. You've got to, because that person is going to continually keep bringing you down. So in other words, you don't want to just say, okay, well, I resent him, but I'm going to just tolerate it because, you know, it's not a good situation, but it could be worse, something like that. Well, that's just selling yourself short. Why would you do that? Why not just say, well, you know, I probably have other options and I don't have to be around people who put me down. This is where you've got to work on your thinking. So, again, resentment is just one example. Mm-hmm. Indifference is another example. And if you're indifferent, it's like you don't care. So you're just, or you're apathetic. And it's like, I can't do anything about the earth, so why even bother? You know, so again, that's another example that I've already brought up. And if you feel irritable, now irritability can come from multiple sources. You can be irritable rationally again or irrational, like with anger. So I'm irritated when, let's say, people around me are, you know, making a lot of noise and I'm trying to work at my desk and write a book. You see, so they burst in and that irritates me. So, or I'm allowing it to irritate me. But actually, I should know that this is going to happen. And when they do,
pardon. It's a complete different position. No, one is kind of the victim of this emotion, and the other one is rather an observer, kind of conscious witness of this emotion, right?
Yeah. So you want to be able to step back from your emotional state and say, well, what's realistic in this situation? So if you have a family and they're going to burst in at a certain time, and you know that, then why would you be irritable when they did? Because you knew it was coming, but sometimes you still do. You see, so then the problem is not them, it's you. You've got to find another way to find that space. So again, emotions, people often make this mistake. They'll say things like, well, her problem is that she's just emotional. What they really mean when they say that is she's irrational. Or they're implying that, or she's operating from her emotions. Or sometimes they mean like people will connect a concept like love. They'll think of love as an emotion, but love is very complicated. But it's fundamentally not an emotion, in my view. It's mainly a way of thinking about someone. And from that, you have positive, let's say even euphoric feelings, but the love comes from the way you think about the person. So, but people will think of love as a feeling. Well, if it's a feeling, then define it for me. You see? So then, and also take irritability. Sometimes even your physical body is involved. If you haven't eaten enough food, right? You're hungry. I really do like the term hangry. So you're You're hungry, and that makes you angry. So if you know that if you get hungry, you're going to become irritable, but that irritability comes out as a feeling, not as a sensation. I mean, you may still feel weak. That would be a sensation, but the feeling is happening in the mind. So in any case, did I answer your question about emotions? It's complicated, and you have to figure out. And you can also have very positive emotions when you should not have. So if somebody is a mean-spirited, highly deceptive person, and they're able to trick other people into doing things, let's say stealing money, for example, embezzling. So when they embezzle, maybe they feel very good. They're exhilarated. So the feeling itself, you can't count on that. You got to figure out what's the thinking leading to that feeling.
The tricky thing is, no, if you're listening to like to you right now, everything is logic, everything makes sense, and yes, absolutely, I will apply everything. However, there seem to be some mechanisms, which make it tricky to actually see what is happening in front of your eyes, like metaphorically speaking. And so what I like find very helpful to understand also a little bit about the mechanisms which might distort our view, to kind of be able to see what's going on and to acknowledge the mechanisms of your psyche, and then you can okay, now this is happening, maybe I should be should investigate right now a little bit into my thinking. It seems that that there, for example, some denial going on. I'm not acknowledging something.
Exactly. This is why the toolbox of critical thinking is so important, which includes tools having to do with the dark side. So in other words, take, for example, defense mechanisms. Now, we've known about defense mechanisms for over 100 years, but how many people take them seriously? So take one example of that is projection. People who project onto other people what they themselves are doing.
I have to say, if you confront someone projecting, there might be quite some emotional charge and response coming, maybe because there are really deep patterns behind, right? Also,
exactly. And the fallacies also fall into this category. So we have all of these tools, this knowledge about the mind. We need to use that knowledge. So if we use these defense mechanisms commonly, for example, then I should ask myself, well, how am I using them? And if I say, well, you don't, Linda, because you don't use defense mechanisms, then you know that you're deceiving yourself if you make that move. Because all of us sometimes engage in irrational thinking. The question is, when do you do it? And how bad is it? And how far do you allow yourself to go in the unethical side? How far do you allow yourself to use other people, to manipulate them, to get what you want? How far do you go to cover up what your business is doing so the government won't know about it and you won't get caught polluting in a way you're not supposed to be doing? You see, how do you cover up this and cover up that? So you need to be able, you need to face your thinking. This is intellectual courage, another intellectual virtue. You need to be willing and able to face all of your thinking, good, bad, everything in between. Because if you don't know what's there, how can you command it? And we need to have the best tools that enable us to get as quickly as possible to the problem. So if I have a negative feeling and I say, okay, Linda, what's the thinking leading to that? Because that's a pretty direct path. There's the feeling, which is very clear to me. And all of us are aware of that pulse. So what's leading to that?
So
Everyone
there,
can,
like just
figure it
to
out.
make it
Just
clear,
stop.
everybody has a feeling capacity. It's not that there are
Exactly.
those kind of intellectual, just thinking people, and there are the feely, emotional people. So, but
No,
everybody
yes.
has access to everything.
Exactly. So these are basic tools that we can use, intellectual tools. And then we can go further and say, well, right now, is there something that I'm unwilling to face? Is there, so if somebody has been with us today and later on they're in a group and they say, I'm going to just be thinking about how this group right now is affecting me. And then they say, actually, I'm feeling pretty negative here. And actually, I have been for a while. I don't really feel that comfortable here. I don't even know why I'm here. So I think I can just leave. Do you see? So it's that simple. Just be aware. Just be aware of what you're actually feeling and what you're thinking. And then you can also go further. And everything is not that simple, but these are easy, early, easy moves. And so then we can say, now let me study this group a bit. What is really going on in this group? What are we doing? What is our purpose? What are we trying to accomplish? How is this helping me? How does this help me develop? How does this contribute to my life? And there are people in the world who build things up, and there are people in the world who destroy things. So are you a destroyer? I mean, if you're listening to this, you're probably not. Or if you're viewing this, you're probably one that builds. But you know that there are people who their sole purpose seems to be to destroy.
I mean, also, if we go back to the initial statistics, 75% of, in average, of beliefs are self-sabotaging, then what we're facing, the normal in our society is actually very negative, no? And just to recognize that the normal environment might be actually like not normal but negative. Like that's
I don't want to believe in that 75%.
Okay.
And I know that it's probably very close, but think about it this way. The vast majority of people, well, let me just say that I believe this. The vast majority of people mean well and are basically wanting to just get on with their own lives. And of course, they do self-deceive and they may be selfish and these other things. But then there are if you could say, selfish Sams or selfish Samanthas, the selfish people that are also critical thinkers who are essentially running a lot of the world as we know it. So they're the people who like power for power's sake. Often these people turn into politicians, right? They go to the right schools to get on the right track, to know the right people, to have power, prestige. There are some number of those. And then there are the fair-minded friends, and these are the ones who are fair-minded critical thinkers. And they want to do their best thinking, but also be concerned with the common good. Now, unfortunately, the fair-minded friends don't always want power. Do you see? So the ones that really want power are the ones that tend to be more selfish. You see the problem? So the people who don't really want power, but are wanting to contribute to the common good and to develop as much as they can, these are the people that need to take more power. They need to be leaders, even if they don't want to. So that's one way that I look at it. Now, how the percent that we look at it, and I don't know how the percentages would work out. And we're not all fair-minded. If you're a fair-minded person, you're not always fair-minded. If you're a selfish person, you're not always selfish. You see, again, we're on a continuum somewhere. Sometimes you may be selfish. Sometimes you're fair. Maybe you're perhaps you're mainly fair, but you slip and you sometimes find yourself doing these things that are selfish. And so what I'm saying is that there hasn't been enough irrationality for us yet to have self-destructed. But you could argue that we actually have, in a way, self-destructed, or we're almost there. Because when you destroy your home, when you destroy your own nest, which is what we are doing here, if you do that, what does that, how can you be sane? You're not sane, you're insane. So you could say that the human, a good title for a book would be, Humans, the Insane Species. So we have that. We have that side. But I would say, for practical purposes, each of us should see ourselves. There are different analogies, again, you can use. We have the rational, we have the irrational side. And so you could say, you could use the term Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. So where Dr. Jekyll is the one who's the doctor and he's developing ideas and he's a good person, and Mr. Hyde is this, murders people after hours. It's this very dark side. Well, that story, and I didn't tell it very well, but that story is not a story about a doctor becoming a monster. It's a story about the human, what is within each of us. And so you could ask yourself, how far, let's say, are you willing to go to the dark side to get what you want? Are you willing to abuse people? Are you willing to use them? And sometimes you are being irrational. Let's say, again, take the example of with children. You can be irrational towards your children, and let's say because they're not listening, and you can become dominating. And you can do that gradually without realizing you've done it. And now you begin to learn critical thinking, and you realize that's not an appropriate way to treat someone. So you've got to relearn while also not beating yourself up. Like, how could you have been so stupid? Like, why were you so, that's what we've got to avoid. So you want to achieve your capacities. You want to know your strengths. You've got to be realistic about your strengths and honest about your strengths and honest about what's going on in every situation. And there are ways into that. One is through our emotions. Another is through learning the theory of critical thinking better. And I'll make a final point about, in connection here to the theory. So you see, if I understand intellectual standards, I can say, well, okay, I work towards clarity. I try to be clear in what I say. Accurate, of course, I try to be accurate. If I give an example, if I bring data in, it's accurate. I know that my thing needs to be relevant. I know it needs to be significant. I can go through the whole, the list, and there are hundreds of intellectual standards in every language. I could go through these and I could say, of course, I'm here adhering to all of these. But then let's say that I'm in a situation where I'm misreading the situation because, let's say I have negative emotions towards someone from years past, and I meet them and they're giving me some kind of argument. Discussion, we're talking on the side of the street, I meet them and they start to talk. I've got these still negative emotions from years ago, but they're telling me something that is really important and accurate. And so they may be telling me something that's happening down the road. Maybe there's a fire down the road, and, in the past, this person has lied to me. You see, so I'm bringing in this negative baggage from before. So I can't logically interpret what this person is saying. And yet I feel that I'm being perfectly logical, and that I am perfectly in interpreting this situation. So everyone thinks that they're adhering to intellectual standard. Everyone thinks that their thinking is logical. So if somebody goes in and becomes a mass murderer at a school, that person's thinking to that person was entirely logical. So if your illogical thinking looks to you to be logical, then how is there any hope for the human species? And I think that, in other words, if irrational thinking looks rational and rational thinking looks rational, then how do you know the difference? And there again, we need to know the tools of critical thinking, because we will have that toolbox that will help us determine this at this moment, you see, in a given situation. So we need to practice early moves in critical thinking, and we need the broader toolbox that we develop over time.
What I especially appreciate is also an outside perspective, no? Because if someone mirrors like my behavior, my thinking to myself, or gives a perspective on my own thinking, then it's at times easier to recognize that there's something to look at.
Well, especially if you have someone, let's say you are married to someone who has a very good mind, and together you think well. It's an ideal situation. So you can say, let me give you my thinking. That person says, no, you're off, Simon. Then you know, okay, well.
The tricky thing is, no, my thinking seems so like logical, natural to myself. No, I've been always thinking like that. Like it seems perfect. I'm fine. Yeah.
But you can't just ask anyone, because everyone's thinking is not equally good, right? So you have to carefully choose the people that you share your thinking with in order to get some kind of correction.
Yeah, what I'm referring to is, of course, also to the critical thinking community. I've been participating in your courses, and I'm also in the group with you. But yeah, then also my wife, who knows me quite well, and she has also a very good understanding. So I'm benefiting greatly from outside perspectives. That's what I definitely can acknowledge when I look back, and still, at times it's just tricky,
It is. That's why you have to get out of your mind to check for example, logicalness. Am I thinking deeply about this? Would be another example. Am I missing something? I'm looking through this. I'm thinking through these complexities. What am I missing? Yes, you can't really. This is why the best teachers are the best learners, because they're teaching in order to learn. And by teaching, they're learning. So in other words, so I'm sharing my ideas with you, and in doing so, I'm exploring the ideas with you, see, and then you're questioning me, and that's forcing me, wait a minute, to be a little more clear, to maybe rethink this a bit. So we have to get out of our own minds and get other views. And we also do this with reading. This is why reading great works of literature is so important, because you want to see the best thinking that's ever been done. You want to know what that best thinking is. So that's why we read the classics. So we can see what the highest standards are. And we can see when a great author opens up, let's see, what pathological relationships look like, let's say in a setting, then we can ask ourselves, well, where do I fit in this? Which character am I most like? You see, am I like this bad guy, or am I like this this good one? So
we have someone to model our behavior or
exactly.
calibrate our own thinking too.
Yes, Seneca, who was one of the great Stoics, said, you've got to read in the classics, and you've got to stick to the classics. And imagine this was, just so many, it was almost 2,000 years ago. And most of the classics that we think of have been written since then. So when he thought of the classics, he was reading in the works of Plato and Socrates. So he was quoting Socrates, but he could see that even though there's probably at that point, there wouldn't have been a lot of great literature. It was read the best of what is available and reread that and live by that. Don't just think you've got to read anything that's contemporary, even during those times.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like the first century after Common Era. So we need to focus on the highest level thinking, not just in literature, but in any field. So if you're an engineer, don't you want to study the highest level engineering? If you're an artist, don't you want to be the highest level artist that you can? And how do you become that? Well, that's practicing, and it's learning from, first of all, the best thing that's been done, and then and taking that in and appropriating those ideas, and then building, if you can, on those ideas.
Yeah, I stumbled upon this, I believe 3 years ago, that for your own progress, your own personal growth, you need the three things: introspection, a guidance, like from someone who is a bit further down that road, and ideally a community of people who are curious about progressing themselves. So you have some like a community or people around you who you can kind of calibrate towards, or with them, or you have someone to exchange your ideas, etc. So that I found a very helpful concept too. Yeah.
Yes, this is why in our community online, where we have the open webinars, we have the question and answer sessions. We need to learn together in the critical thinking community, because there are so few people really discussing critical thinking theory and how that applies in context, in the various contexts. And we need much more exploration here. We need books which bring critical thinking into every field of study. And that needs to be done by the people within those fields, because they're the ones that are experts in the field. And so this, and of course, we focus on how we bring the theory into our own personal lives. So we invite everyone to the community, critical thinking community. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Linda, thank you so much. It was again a wonderful conversation, and I feel very much honored. Yeah, for listening to you and being able to absorb all this great expertise and knowledge and experience. And so thank you very much for being here and sharing this valuable content with us. And I can encourage anyone to check out your webpage, and I will add all the links of Foundation for Critical Thinking, the community, etc. So that those who are interested and resonate with what has been shared can learn more and maybe join the community.
Excellent. Let me just say a couple of things on that. It's criticalthinkingcommunity.org, and that's a subscription community. And there are a huge number of resources there, activities for you to do, webinars to attend, and lots of ways to communicate together, to join our study groups. And I've been talking about material fundamentally from our Thinker's Guide to the Human Mind. And I'll share that link with you. Or
yes, that would be awesome. Yeah.
And if people want to go further, I would recommend Critical Thinking Tools for Taking Charge of Your Professional and Personal Life. So those are two books that I would recommend. And then the community, where you can also do some activities there and read much of the content. So thank you so much for asking me to be with you today. I've enjoyed it. I hope that it was helpful.
Oh yeah, definitely. If not that, what is? Yeah.
Well, it'll be
it's
interesting to hear from people who are using some of the theory that we talked about, sharing on your page what they're doing. So if you have a negative emotion, what is the thinking leading to that? Do that homework. Be aware of those feeling states. Ask yourself what the thinking is. And that's one example. So hopefully all of you that are participating will take those ideas seriously. And then the question, to what degree is your ego involved? To what degree are you just going along with the crowd? These are big concepts that we need to be asking ourselves throughout the day. Am I going along? Am I in this group? Is it for good reasons? Is it really helping me? Or you see, harming me? So these are some moves that we all need to be making throughout our daily lives. So thank you again, Simon.
Yeah, thank you very much. And yeah, then let's make some moves.
Yeah, let's make some moves.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Linda, and of course also thank you for listening and being curious, being interested, and yeah, look forward to see you again for the next conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.